Do you know what I love? I love copyright bullshit. I love how Hasbro can block my videos worldwide at absolute random. I love how Hasbro can claim copyright on 2-second videos. I love how Hasbro can claim copyright on videos that I've already won copyright battles on. I love how they can claim copyright on Snowdrop and Double Rainboom. Oh wait, claim copyright on reviews of Snowdrop and Double Rainboom. And I definitely love how they knowingly reinstate copyright claims on those videos. But not as much as I love getting a copyright strike for fighting back and being unable to post 15-minute or longer videos while I get it fixed. I mean, come on, Hasbro! You don't see Disney doing this kind of shit.
You want a piece of me? I will see you in court! I'm gonna sue your sorry little...
So yeah, I've been having a lot of behind-the-scenes trouble, which prevents me from posting a particular video, which does total more than 15 minutes. In the meantime, it gives me an opportunity to tackle something that's been on my hit list for a long time now. Wayside. Now let me state something very clear. On its own, Wayside is mediocre. Its storytelling and humor is mostly harmless, although its flash animation is some of the worst that I've ever seen. So if it's not that bad, then why am I reviewing it? Well, the only thing of note about it, that it's an adaptation of a book, is the one thing that pushes it into atrocity territory. Growing up, I loved the Wayside book series, so needless to say that I was excited for this cartoon. And it taught me how not to do an adaptation. The book series focused on the weirdest grade school ever. For starters, it was meant to be one story with 30 classrooms next to each other, but the builders screwed up and made it 30 stories with one classroom on each story. Apparently, the guy who made La Fidel was still able to get work. Both the books and the cartoon focused on the classroom on the 30th floor, taught by Mrs. Jules. Each of the kids had their own particular gimmick, detailed in the first book. And we come to our first downgrade. The Wayside cartoon chose Todd. His particular gimmick was that he always got in trouble and was sent home early on the kindergarten bus through no fault of his own. And in the cartoon, he's a new student for some reason. This is a problem for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that because he's sent home early, we're forced to miss out on some of the weirdness that made the book so great. And secondly, out of 28 students you can pick, you picked Todd. You could have picked the girl who rides the motorcycle, but no, you picked the guy who gets sent home early. If you wanted a straight man, you could have picked Ben, who actually was a new kid. If you're wondering, his gimmick was that everyone thought his name was Mark. That's pretty much it. And that's the way it fails to adapt the books from the premise alone. To show you guys how badly it fails, I'm going to need to pick an episode that was modeled after a chapter in the books. The first chapter, to be specific. The episode starts at night, for some reason. Yeah, based on the books. Let's see how far Teletoon can stretch that. And we see another major downgrade. The books had 27 or 28 students. This one has about a dozen because having a full class would cost too much money. And most of their personalities have changed. Steven, for example, wore crazy outfits in the book. In this one, he's constantly dressed as an elf, because using the original idea would take time, creativity, and effort. The main characters, for some reason, have had the biggest and, dare I say, worst changes. Myron, to quote the books, was the nicest, most normal person on the 30th floor. Here he's nothing but a fat, obnoxious, spastic idiot. But the worst change has to be to Mauricia. In the books, she was obsessed with ice cream. In this one, she's a tomboy who punches Todd. I guess they changed it because they didn't want kids imitating someone obsessed with ice cream. After all, I think that's why they can chowder. And by that logic, I guess punching the object of your affection is okay.
Yeah, well, I wasn't always like this. Tell him, Dana.
Isn't that what I just said? Anyway, Dana was one of the more forgettable characters in the book. So why not make her an established character and just forget about half of the class with an established personality?
Mauricia was a gentle, girly girl. Why, aren't you the prettiest peach of a porcupine?
Yeah, this doesn't have unfortunate implications written all over it. In the books, Mrs. Gorf was their original teacher. Here, she's just a substitute, and yes, little changes like that don't matter, but I'm on a roll here.
One day, Mrs. Jules was sick, and we got the meanest substitute ever.
Oh, you mean Wendy Nogard, who could read minds with her third ear, and use those thoughts to turn the class on each other. No, instead we get...
My name is Mrs. Gorf, and if any of you are bad, I'll wiggle my ears, stick out my tongue, and turn you into an apple.
Yeah, that's pretty much taken straight from the book. Except in the book, the kids took it at face value and slowly turned into apples over a few days. Here, they laugh and get turned into apples in the span of 5 minutes. We get interrupted by this guy. He contributes nothing to the story. It's just to remind the audience that this tale is a flashback. Because, you know, kids need to be reminded of that every fucking minute. This is called padding out an 11-minute episode. Eventually, only Myron and Mauricia are left. Apparently, here he's a hero because he stands up to Mrs. Gorf and he gets turned into a potato because potatoes. Wait, what?
Turned him into a potato.
I love it how the voice actress sounds like she's realizing how stupid this joke sounds. Eventually, Lewis comes in. In the books, he was a kind of all-knowing kind of guy. Here, he's a surfer dude.
Bonus!
as a tribute to the writer? Anyway, he sees that Mrs. Gorf has a ton of apples and thinks that she's a nice teacher. In the original, parents were worried that their kids had gone missing, and because Mrs. Gorf had so many apples, no one suspected her. So Mauricia takes the apples and skips away. It's been what, 3 minutes this time? We gotta remind the kids that this is a flashback, because they'd forget this crucial detail if we didn't.
Yes, Mauricia skipped. She felt it was much more ladylike.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Anyway, Mauricia trips over a pumpkin and loses the apples. Now here, it's plainly shown that they can all move of their own accord, so the suspense is kinda dropped a bit and all the characters look like idiots. And yes, they could sort of move in the book too. In fact, that's how they got revenge on Mrs. Gorf. They all retaliated against her. So the apples get trapped in all kinds of peril. And
Maybe being turned into a little old apple is just a part of growing up.
yeah, she's got a bit of a southern drawl when she was different. Eventually, Mauricia's pet gets turned into a pineapple, and Mauricia snaps and transforms. She rescues all of the apples, and we get reminded that this is a flashback because the story lacks any sort of substance. Oh wait, the original story didn't. So Mauricia fights back, and the apples attack Mrs. Gorf. Kinda reminds me of something I read in a book once. I'd accuse them of plagiarism, but it's clear that they never read that book.
At this point, Mauricia could have turned back too. Back into the polite and proper girl she'd been before.
Polite and proper, huh? You know, you should really be careful what you say. Someone could take that the wrong way. It's almost like you're saying that the way Mauricia was is how girls should act. Well, when Mrs. Gorf tries to turn her into an apple, Mauricia uses a mirror, and that turns Mrs. Gorf into an apple. In the original, Lewis eats her. But here, we don't know what happens.
That's not really Mrs. Gorf, is it? Ow!
Yeah, I think we're done here. Normally, adaptations are almost never good as the original. But when there's so much creativity in the original, and yet so much of the original creativity is ignored, it kind of makes you wonder